Welcome, welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Morning.
And of course, we are in the midst of the song of triumph, right? So we were talking about, let's take a look at the verse that we were looking at. Yes. So it was uvaruach hapecha, and in the breath of your anger, ne'ermu mayim, the water stood up in heaps. Nitzvu kamod ned nozlim, they were standing like that is the waters, right? The liquids were standing up erect like a well, there's some who say it was a wall, some say it was like a hide, although I think Rashi actually says it's not. That is not a correct translation. We're going to take a look at that in just a moment. Kaf'u te'omot, right? The great depths were congealed. Kaf'u belev yam, in the heart of the sea. So we stopped in the middle of this Rashi here, this quite lengthy Rashi going on. So, Kamod, give me 1 second. Hold on 1 second. I'm going to pause the share. Pause. Let's see if I can pause the recording. Can I do that? Hold on a second. I'm going to have to stop the share for 1 second, pause the recording. Back into the share. Okay. All right. Very good. Here we go. Come on, Ned, right? So he says, there's the Hebrew, right? And he says ketargumo, which means as he translated it. And the word is sure in the Aramaic. So kechoma, that's another Hebrew word for choma. So I'm actually going to go up here and I'm going to change that because Rashi explicitly says that's incorrect. It's not the correct word. So I'm going to translate it and put according to I'm going to put in wool there. Okay. All right. There we go. Always study, study, study. So here we go. Ned Lashon Tzavur. So he says there's the Tzavar gestra. It's a heap or a pile. In the Gestra dictionary under the heading Tzavar. So he says Ned has the meaning of a heap or a pile. Ukanus, and gathered together. Kamo, okay, here we go in Isaiah. Interesting, right? Ned Katsir Bayom Nachla. Okay, this interesting. It must be, it's not Nachala, but from Chala il, right? So he says a heap of the harvest. Katsir would be the harvest on a day of sickness. All right, not a verse I'm familiar with. And then in Psalm 33, Kones Kene. That is a verse that I am somewhat familiar with, and it means again, who gathers like a wall or sets up like a wall. Lo, and he says, Lo kativ kinaod. See the aleph there, right? It isn't written as kinod, which is the leather flask. Ela kamo kanade, but it says kanade without that aleph. The ilu haya kanade kamo kanod. And where this word kanade, see, he's going directly against the way I was translating it before, right? Were it to mean kinod, the kones lashon hachnasa, and kones in this case from a root that means to bring into it, right? Haya lo lichtov, it should have written, right? Should have been written this machnis, right? Who to bring in kevenaod, like into a leather flask. Me hayam, the waters of the sea. Ella, however, kones, the word kones, lashon osef, it has the meaning of to gather, right? Vetsover, and one who collects, not who puts into, but rather who gathers, who collects. Who? V'chein, and he says, like in Joshua, right? Chapter 3. Kamu neid echad. Kamu, they arose like one heap, right? One pile. V'ya'amdu neid echad. So again, either it says v'yamdu nedechad, perhaps the verse goes on like that, right? They stood up because kamu is the same as v'yamdu ned echad, unless Rashi is paraphrasing it here, right? As one heap, one pile. Ve'en lashon kima v'amida, right? And you wouldn't be able to use rising and standing bin odot regarding leather flasks. Ela bachumot. That kind of language only applies to rise like a wall, utziburim and piles. Velo matzinu, not only that, but grammatically, we have never found the word nod, meaning a wineskin, right? Nakud ela b'melofum. It is always no nod. That is, melofum is the way Rashi describes the vowel cholam. That's the vowel that looks like a vav, right? So here, right here is a cholam there, lashon, right? We've had this before, and he gives examples. Tehillim, Psalm 50. This looks like Psalm possible Tehillim. It could be either Psalm. I think it's Psalm 56 is what it is. It's hard to tell because it almost looks like a tet as well, but I don't think it's Psalm 9. Sima dimati benodecha. Place my tears in your flask. Or in Judges chapter 4, et nod hachalav. That is to say, the flask of the cream or the milk. Right? That's I believe, the story of Deborah and Barak and also Yael, who used who was giving Sisera the warm milk. Kaf'u, right? And that's the word that we understand as congealed. Kamo, he says, similar to a word in Job chapter 10, ukigvina takpieneni, right? And so gvina normally is a word that means cheese or something like that, right? So something like that. He congealed me. In other words, he made me stiff. He stiffened me, something like that. Shehukshu v'na'asu, because the word, I think referring here to the waters, right? They became hard, v'ne'esu ka'avanim, and they became like stones. V'hamayim zokim et hamitzrim, and the waters cast the Egyptians al ha'evan b'koach. They forcibly cast the Egyptians on the stone. V'nilchamim bam b'chomine koshi. And so they did battle against them, these stones, in all these types of hard things. Right? Beleviam, into the heart of the sea, right? Bachozek hayam, that is in the strongest part, in the part of the sea, probably that was the deepest or the most tempestuous or whatever. V'derech hamikrat, he says it is a scriptural style, ledaber kain, to use this kind of expression, ad lev hashamayim. He gives, for example, until the heart of heaven, right? The deepest point of heaven. Belev ha'ala, literally again, in the heart of the oak tree. In other words, the thickest part of the oak tree. Lashon ikro, right? So this connotes, it has the meaning of its main part, v'tokpo, and its strongest part, shel davar, of something. So believe, using that term, believe, in the heart.
Excuse me,
Oh,
Rabbi.
Bart. Yes, Bart. I'm sorry.
Can we stop and step back a second? I thought the Torah was supposed to be perfect, yet the commentary says it's wrong. He
No,
said
what's
and
wrong? Tell me what's wrong. What was wrong?
Rafi said that you use this letter instead of that letter, and he's saying that the Torah is not right.
Oh,
And
no,
he's
no,
saying,
no, no, no. No, he's saying that someone who translates that word nod as referring to the wineskin is mistaken, because that's not the way the Torah is writing it. If I'm understanding your concern here, but that the word nod, as spelt in this particular poem, means a wall, has an idea of a wall or a pile or something like that. Is that what
Okay.
you're referring to?
Yeah, yeah. Just stepping back and saying, no, this is wrong, saying the Torah is wrong and he
Yes.
is right. And that's kind of the big picture that I
No,
got.
no, no. Okay, no, no, no. No, what he's saying is those who translate it, he says, in fact, Onkelos translates it correctly. He translates it as a wall, but there is this word nod, which is sounds like nod, right? With the aleph. And he says the word with an aleph means a wineskin, but without the aleph, because the aleph we might describe as a weak letter, okay?
Yeah,
But
I get
generally
it.
the aleph does not disappear in a word. So if you study Hebrew grammar, there are verbs that end with the letter aleph. And yet, generally, in conjugating those verbs, the aleph does not disappear. It
Okay.
remains there. So that's the point he's making here.
All right.
And
I just
I
was
mis I mistranslated it according to Rashi and according to Onkelos. Yes. All right.
okay. All right. Thank you.
Mhm. Okay. Let's see. Oh, it reminds me of one of my favorite, excuse my sort of digressing for a moment, but one of my favorite musicals is Guys and Dolls. And I love it when Sky Masterson, there's a scene where Sky Masterson goes into the Save a Soul mission, and he's looking at these placards that they have, right? And something, and these, and it says Proverbs, Proverbs. And he picks up this, that the quote and then Proverbs. It sounds like a proverb. And he picks it up and he says, "This is wrong." And the Sarah, I can't think of her last name in the movie, in the play says, "Are you blaspheming the good book?" And he says, "No, it's not Proverbs, it's Isaiah." That was wrong about the pro. And so she looks it up, and of course it is from Isaiah. He's read the Gideon Bible lots of times. That's how he knows. It's one of my favorite scenes. It's wrong. Okay. Going on, I think we can go on to the next verse. Let me see if we can. Here we are. All right. Verse 9. Okay. Amar Oyev, right? Again, this word Amar, it appears so often as meaning to think, right? But we learned it as said, but it isn't. It's the fact that he thought, right? The enemy thought, Erdof, I will pursue, Asig, I will attain, I will reach, Achalek Shalal, I will divide up the spoil, Timla Emu Nafshi, my soul will be filled. I will have my fill. In other words, Arik Harbi, I will bear my sword. Korishemo Yadi, my hand will subdue them. Subdue them. So going on. Find the place here. Right. Amar Oyev, right? La amor keshepitem badvarim. So again, Rashi is disagreeing with me, and he's going with a literal translation of the enemy said, and in this case, referring to Pharaoh, right? The Pharaoh said la amor, it's understood as Pharaoh, said to his people, keshepitem bidvarim, that when he was seducing them with words, right, he was convincing them to pursue the Israelites. Erdof, I will, and of course, there's the singular here, right? I will pursue Vasigim, and I'm going to encounter them. I'm going to reach them. Achalek shalal im sarai v'avadai, and I will divide up the spoil with my princes, with my nobles, and with my servants. So that's how Rashi is understanding this little part here. I will hold on to the fact that that I'm understanding the enemy as being a collective noun in a way, but on the other hand, this is the interesting part that it can be interpreted in a different kind of way, and I of course will always tip my yarmulke to Rashi, right? Timla Amo. This is again a poetic stylistic form, right? And this mo means him, right? This mo, it's this pronominal suffix meaning them. titmale mehem. In other words, I will satisfy myself from them. Nafshi, so this word, my soul, right, generally. Ruthi, my spirit, right? Veritzoni, and my desire. But al titma, and do not be surprised. Al teva hamedaberet bishtayim, right? So do not be surprised regarding a noun that speaks of two. That's what it sounds like, right? Timla amor, right? It from that is, it's saying in a way, it's saying my souls will be satisfied. Okay, so titmale is hitmale or titmale, excuse me, but timpla aim, right, would be a plural setting of this verb, right? So it sounds like a plural, even though the verb is in the plural. Timla amo timale mayhem. Yesh harbe, he says, right? It should be filled from them. There are many, yesh harbe la kalashon hazeh. There are many examples of this kind of expression. And he gives, okay. So he says in Judges chapter 1, Ki eretz hanegev natati kamo natatali, right? Not, sorry, natatni, natatni. That's what it looks like, right? So for the South land, right? They gave to me, and it says what it really means is they or you gave to me. V'lo yachlo dabro l'shalom, right? And here it is, lo yachlu dabro, right? So they were not able to speak to them peacefully. I think this is the point that Rashi's trying to make here. I'm not absolutely certain of this, but I mean, he is saying shtayim, which would mean two, and he must be speaking about the form that the verb is taking, and that it looks like a plural, right? So that's, of course, Genesis 37, and that's, I believe we're talking about Joseph's brothers. Kamor diber imor. It's as if he spoke with him. So it's interesting, right? They say dabro would be plural, but it really means he spoke with him. Jeremiah, in Jeremiah 10, okay, uh, let's see. Okay. Banai yatsuni kamo yatsu mimeni, right? So I believe my children who came out from me, who descended from me, is what they're talking about. And Oyev, uh, Job chapter 31, Mesaper Tsa'adai Agidenu. So he's also this Agidenu, Asaprenu, etc. Right? So mispar, the number of my steps, Agidenu. It sounds like I will tell him. I will tell him. So the new here is new is usually a plural kind of expression, but it's kamo agid lo, I will tell him. So that's what he's talking about. He's talking about the timla'e mo, I guess, although here it is plural. So I'm again, as you can see, I'm trying to understand better what's the grammatical point that Rashi's making here. Okay. Okay. Af kan timla amo timale nafshi mehem. So again, he says here too, this expression timla amo, timla aim, okay, would be they would be filled, but it means timale nafshi. I will satisfy myself from them mayhem. So, okay. Arik harbi, I will bear my sword. Eshlof, in other words, I will um, draw out my sword, right? For al shem shehu marik et ta'ar, and the reason because he empties the scabbard, beshlifato, when he draws the sword out, and stretches out that sword, v'nishar rek, and the scabbard is left empty, nofel bo lashon haraka. For that reason, he's using this expression to empty. Kamor Merikim Sakahem, as it says, this is in Genesis where it's talking about the brothers emptying their sacks, Morikim Sakahem. And Jeremiah 48, Vakelav Yariku, right? Something like they emptied their vessels. Ve'im tomar, and should you say, ein lashon rekut nofel al hayotze, and if you should say that emptying doesn't belong, it doesn't apply to the thing that you're taking out, right? It's the thing that it's the bag that gets emptied, not the contents of the bag. Or it's the scabbard that gets emptied and not the sword. Why does it use that? Ella al hatik. It's only talking about the purse, literally, right? The thing that's enclosing it. For al hasak, or regarding the sack. For al hakli, right? Or the vessel. Sheyatzami menu, from which it was taken out. Avalo alacher, if it doesn't refer to the sword, alayayin, it doesn't refer to the wine. Velidchok ulefaresh arik charbi, and so to argue against this and to explain arik charbi, that phrase arik charbi, kalashon, according to an expression in Genesis 14, vayarek et chanichav, where so here's that word yarak, right? The rik, where it means he equipped his 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 assistants, something like that. His or Chanichav, I guess he's translating his arm. He armed them, right? Those people who were appointed by him, his 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 helpers. And here's the Aramaic. Is dayen becharve, right? He armed them with swords. Matzinu halashon musaf af al hayotze. So in that case, right, we would find out if we translate it that way, then we understand that it's referring to the item that was removed, right? And here we go, Sheir Ashirim Aleph. So here we got Song of Songs, chapter 1, Shemin Turak, right? So in that case, again, we're talking about the oil that is somehow you know is being placed, right, that would taking the oil out to anoint someone, right? Or Jeremiah chapter 48, velo hurak mikli el kli, right? It wasn't taken from one vessel to another vessel. Lo hurak hakli ein katevkan. It doesn't say it wasn't used in the passive sense, right? That it was taken out. Ein katevkan ela lo hurak hayayin. So it says this yayin was not hurak. However, we want to understand that mikli el kli, from one vessel to another. Matzinu halashon, so we find that this kind of expression, musav al hayayin, that in fact it does refer to the wine. In other words, the thing that was taken out. I'm sorry, this is such a complicated piece of Rashi going on here. V'chein, and likewise in Ezekiel 28, v'heriku charvotam, right? Al Yofi Chachmatcha Dechiram, where it says they drew their swords against, right? Al Yofi Chachmatcha, right? Regarding something about the beauty of the wisdom, and I'm not really sure what the context is. Dechiram of Hiram. Hiram, of course, king of Tyre, and again. whether or not this is referring, it's a metaphoric way of referring to the temple, because Hiram helped King Solomon, I believe, with cedars, etc., in building the temple, and this is referring to the people who destroyed the temple. Tori Shemu. There's again this um, poetic form, Lashon Rishut. So again, it has to do with poverty, v'dalut. Again, this has to do with something that's poor. Kamo, and this says in Samuel 1:2, Morish Uma'avir, Uma'ashir. So there's the word Morish, meaning the God who makes poor and enriches. So there we are on that one. So I'm going to stop here and let's see. All right. Were you able to hear me with all the noise going on outside? Was it filtered out? I can't hear you because you're muted.
Yeah, it's okay. I was able to hear you. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't find any problem at all. I didn't know you had noisy in the
Oh,
room.
that's great. So then it's filtering out the sound because I have someone working in the yard and it's making a lot of noise. All right. But so I'm still recording. Is there any, if you need me to go over that whole long little part where Rashi was discussing, the issue of drawing the sword out of, that he said it had to do with emptying, and that one should say, well, it should be the thing that's being emptied that's being referred to, and trying to say no, and that there was in fact an alternative way to translate that word. Um, but then going back, I believe, and saying, no, there are examples where in fact it is referring to the thing that was being, not the sack, but the sword itself that was emptying the other thing. So if I need to go back over that, I will next time.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Okay. I'll take another look at it. All right. Very
Good.
good. I will stop the recording here.
These songs that Moses sings